President Bola Ahmed Tinubu this past week concluded a two-day historic visit to the United Kingdom, with diplomats and analysts now highlighting significant economic prospects and diplomatic gains from that visit. However, a note of caution is being sounded that the immediate and long-term success of the trip will ultimately depend on implementation rather than optics. The visit, hosted at the highest level of British diplomacy by King Charles III, resulted in investment commitments estimated at about $1.51 billion, alongside a range of bilateral agreements aimed at deepening trade, infrastructure, development, and strategic cooperation. Relations between Nigeria and the United Kingdom date back to colonial times, but have since evolved into a multifaceted partnership anchored on trade, education, and diaspora ties. In recent years, both countries have sought to reposition the relationship toward mutual economic growth, particularly under frameworks such as the Enhanced Trade and Investment Partnership. Economist and senior partner at XPM Professionals, Dr. Paul Alaje, joins me now to take a look at the visit and other issues. Good afternoon, Dr. Paul Alaje, and thank you for joining us on this Live, the Sunday Talk Show.
Good afternoon, Doctor, and thank you so very much for having me.
Okay, let's start with the importance of the state visit by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, March 17 to 19. The symbolism, the substance of it, considering that this is the first president since return to civilian rule in 1999 in 27 years that will be invited on a state visit to the United Kingdom. And not just a state visit, the first to be hosted in 37 years at the Windsor Castle, which is the more historic, ancient, since 11th century location of British monarchy. And now the president has been there, he has seen, he has returned. We saw the pomp, the pageantry, and all the agreements that were signed. But in your assessment, what do you consider the significance of this particular visit?
Thank you once again, Doctor. I think this visit is very significant, and it's significant because of the economic implications for Nigeria as well as the United Kingdom. The immediate thing that is in the media that we have seen is a multi-million pounds agreement or MOU, understanding between the two countries, that is United Kingdom and Nigeria, to, of course, help it put investment within the Nigerian major ports, especially the Tinker port, the one that is mostly in the media, even though there are about two of them that is in consideration. So, first of all, what we see that is of importance to Nigeria is investment in that sector, as well as the fact that United Kingdom is one of the major financial hubs for the entire world. Nigeria perhaps might be positioning herself in a way to tell the world that we are repositioning as an investment destination. We are also repositioning as a place where people can come to. Recall that President Tinubu, just like President Buhari, have been going from one country to another. President Tinubu was seen in India, was seen in Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and a few other places, which include Ethiopia and quite a number of other places. Now in the United Kingdom, it's not just another visit that this should be considered. It should be considered as one with which Nigeria is saying, without equivocation, that investment could be made on our soil. UK is among those 7 states, 7 countries where nations try to prove a point that we are a place for the world to invest. We have investment areas where the world can come and invest. Now, this, of course, should not just be seen as just that we have gone, like many other places that we have gone to, including Saudi Arabia. The question will now be, beyond the visit, beyond signing MOU, and I can count several memorandum of understanding that we have signed, are we able to implement them? Yes, the whole world will say that Nigeria has investment opportunity, but investment opportunity without structured opportunity, it eventually will fail. We have seen this between Nigeria and China. We have seen it between Nigeria and Saudi Arabia and so many other places. The energy should now be, how do we make our nation beyond appearing as an opportunity, but as a place that is predictable, as a place where investors will come and there will be no bottleneck. That will speak to institutionalization and infrastructure that is already on ground. And I think the authority will need to look deeply into how do we quickly convert some of these agreements and talks that we have had with several partners around the world and several nations into coming to our country without wasting time and, of course, investing in the same.
Well, the point you raised, let me quickly piggyback on that about implementation. Now, this administration, the Tinubu administration, has signed over 30 MOUs with African countries and also countries outside Africa. And the major concern has been about implementation. Now, MOUs are different from agreements. When you sign these MOUs, Memoranda of Understanding or Memorandum of Understanding, you have to follow up to activate the essential elements. But how many of these have we been able to follow through, to, see through, and to translate into concrete results? What do you think the problem is? That we have these ceremonies, but we don't see the immediate results. Why?
Well, beyond the politics, there is certainly the economics. I think the administration will need to reposition by letting those in charge of trade as well as investment, which of course is as important as fiscal and monetary authority. The challenge here in Nigeria is that our attention for most of the time is just on fiscal side and monetary side. The third leg that is as important as fiscal as monetary is trade. And when I say trade, I don't mean buying and selling. I'm talking of import-export, I'm talking balance of payment, I'm talking foreign trade. So it's important for all MOU signed, for all agreement, which is even higher than MOU, agreement signed, there must be a team whose job will be to follow up, timeline to be submitted, the progress is either to be published or submitted to Nigerian authority, but most of the time we don't see this. Again, bottlenecks may also come from bureaucracy and so on and so forth. But for most of the time, I can tell you that follow-up seems to be the challenge. We saw a case in aviation where perhaps aviation minister more than once or twice had to go back to the United Arab Emirates to ensure that the agreement between UAE, the MOU between UAE and Nigeria did not break down. And we saw that ban was lifted on travel bans on some Nigerians, especially those that want to renew their visas in the United Arab Emirates that are currently working. Also, we've seen that the Emirates, until recently that the war started, was flying back to Lagos and hoping to extend to Abuja. One would also hope that if you have seen that method at work, the president visited, of course, United Arab Emirates. So if that had worked, it was because the MOU was followed up on over and over and over again. The world is busy doing so many things. If Nigeria wants to attract the world, we must present ourselves as one that the world cannot do without, that the world needs, either in investment or in buying one or two things from, or places where they can buy from. That is really very important. The beginning of all things will just be for president of nation to visit, for business persons to sign agreement, government functionaries, ministers, for them to be present. But beyond all of those, that is just the beginning of the real conversation. Okay. And I know that you would remember that there was
Go ahead.
No, I said you remember that there was a time Nigeria signed a currency deal. I can hear you, doctor.
Yeah,
there was a time Nigeria signed a currency deal with China, and it was as though that was the end. We will not need dollar again. I mentioned that time that if this agreement is not thoroughly considered, thoroughly followed, we followed through, it will still go back to as though we didn't have any MOU, any understanding with China. Today, it's as though the understanding was not there. Most of our importers are still going with the dollar, even those that are going to China. So it's important for us to note that if we must agree, it is beyond just signing MOU. The real gist is in the implementation, not just in the celebration.
Okay, you talked about balance of trade, balance of payments. The figure in terms of trade between the UK and Nigeria is put at about $8.1 billion. Out of that, Nigeria exports crude oil mainly to the United Kingdom. The value is put at about $1 billion, right? Then the UK sends us majorly refined products. They get about 1.6 billion in return. In terms of trade surplus, the UK is at an advantage. Do you think anything has been done this time around to, tilt it, in terms of that gap, in terms of balance of trade in favor of Nigeria? Do you see anything in that direction?
Well, what we need to be doing with the UK is to improve our trade with the UK, and also our balance of payment should favor us. It should be positive when there is head-to-head comparison between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. But what will help us get there is manufacturing, that's finished product or processing. Are we really doing well in those two key areas? As of now, the answer is no. Do I think that we will get there really soon or pretty soon in short term? For now, the answer is also no. And I will explain if I have a bit of time. The reason is this: for most of the things that we have, you see, our industry are still importing raw materials. Meanwhile, we have agro output, we have natural resource, but because of our inability to process them to what we become input to our industry, we still have to import them. Even though those ones we buy from us, they will import from us as natural, as agro output or minerals, then process them into industrial input, then we buy again from them. And this is the real challenge we have. I don't think that we will be able to meet up in the short term or in the medium term until we go back to building key foundations, which right now they are missing. So what will that mean? If we must grow in industry, we need to get energy correctly. I know that the supply we are doing right now is less than 7,000 megawatt, and I'm being charitable. In the real sense, about 3,500, about 50% of that number is what I can say we are doing effectively. How many industrial zones are still viable, are still available? See, when the British were here, they ensured that there were industrial zones in some area, even though small. One would wonder that when they left, we would have multiplied or quadrupled those industrial zones functionally in Nigeria by now. But that's not what we have. What we have is that for most of those industrial zones, they are fast becoming real estate outfit, where we are building two-story buildings, selling mansions, and so on and so forth. And now it's good to do real estate business, it's cool. But beyond those, after building the house, where will we work so that we can pay rent, or we can even buy those houses in the first instance? So government must get serious, and I mean subnational and the federal government must get serious in this regard to ensure that we re-energize our industrial zone and our trade section, so that we can export to the UK in order for us to reduce the susceptibility of naira to devaluation, and also to reduce the trade imbalance between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. If we don't, something is certain. Naira will keep depending on London for us to import some of the finished goods that we have. As low as school uniform, we import, I don't know, maybe in recent time, but around 2016, 2017, I noticed Nigeria were importing some key things that we could have produced locally. And I think that to solve some of this problem is not really rocket science. And let me add this quickly, Doctor. I also think that for some areas, I think Nigerian government, we need to come to terms with some realities. That yes, we have agro produce in places like Benue, in places like Kebbi, and so on and so forth. We have to be deliberate. See, China did not get there overnight. China was deliberate. Government will need to be deliberate. You will not leave it just in the hand of private sector to say that we want to create processing zones in this area. So perhaps go to Benue, go to Kebbi, go to Osun, those key areas, go to Imo, where farmers are producing. Okay. In this area, ensure that things that we attract processors gets there, that we can export to the metropolis and perhaps to the rest of the world.
I'll get to the food question in a short while. But let's look at some of the deals that Nigeria came home with. We're told that Coventry University in education this time has agreed to set up, a campus, a satellite campus in a place called Alaro City. They bought Ovaltine. They're setting up a £24 million manufacturing facility in Nigeria. We used to drink Ovaltine. Well, I don't know whether you knew Ovaltine.
Yeah, I drank Ovaltine
in the days of his fame in Nigeria. And then also you have this £746 million investment, the Tinkan port that you refer to, and also the Apapa port. But the thing that people have complained about that is that, look, this is going to be funded by Citibank in form of a loan. It will be managed by UKEF, UK Export Finance. And that out of this 746, the UK is going to send British firms that will take away about £236 million. British Steel will send about 7 million worth of steel. This is British Steel that they have just reorganized for relevance. And so what is left for Nigeria? Some people say, well, if we had Ajaokuta Steel, Osogbo Rolling Mills, and our own steel industry developed, we would have been able to do that. But this is like taking a loan, and the British will benefit more from it. These are some of the details, apart from Zenith Bank opening a branch in Manchester, other banks like Access Bank and all of that, further expanding their presence in the United Kingdom. Can you assess those, takeaways that the Nigerian government has been celebrating?
Well, we need to look at it very clearly and dispassionately. When you look at what Nigeria is opening in the UK, financial institutions, which is service sector, and you look at what UK is bringing to Nigeria is manufacturing related, education, which of course is service. But when you look at demand for education by Nigerians, what is coming to the UK, it is beneficiary more to them. Why can't we find a way to improve universities such as University of Ibadan, Obafemi Awolowo University, UNN, ABU, and so on and so forth? Credibility, we have had our best come from this institution, but with our mouth, we've run them down. So if you look at it, yes, we're going to see major improvement or investment in Apapa, but not the entire amount. Just like you rightly mentioned, we go to those places. Again, for every kobo spent, lending organization, lending outfit, lending institution gets back interest on their investment. Either they are going to partner so that they share profit, or they get interest on investment. It's purely loan, it's purely facilities. Whichever way model that is used, we know that we are going to pay back anyway. It will be bad enough if our currency get devalued, which means we'll now be paying more naira. Importers will have to pay more for importing whatever they are bringing to the country. One would also want to say that when you see Nigeria opening bank branches, good enough for shareholders of those banks, good enough that we are doing that. But what should we be doing? Should we just be taking only services to those places, or making our banks to have presence? I think to some extent is beneficial to them, but will it really help to a large extent the kind of image that we want to have as a country? Without help our reputation as a country, will it also help that we improve or we grow significantly beyond all of those? Well, you see that is for what Nigeria is getting, you cannot compare it with the benefit that goes to the United Kingdom when you pay them on the same pedestal. But I can say that yes,
you wanted to finish a sentence. I have other things I want to bring up with you. So if you can make the responses a bit more concise. But please go ahead.
Okay, sir. Okay, but I can say that in the coming period, what we would see is that those that are coming to invest in Nigeria are certainly going to come with the intention of making gains, and that may not be exactly what many would expect. So I also want to say it's good that we have something coming in, but with that thing that is coming liberate us overnight, the answer of course is no.
Okay, the president also held bilateral meetings with Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom. And the major highlight that Nigerians have been discussing is this immigration agreement arrived at, which would require Nigeria to take back Nigerians who have overstayed, Nigerians who have submitted false asylum claims. And the Nigerian government has had to clarify that this deportation of Nigerians who have overstayed their visa or who have had rejected asylum claims and all of that, and the repatriation of criminals does not include foreign criminals, which is a point that the Minister of Foreign Affairs had addressed long before now, that Nigeria will not be a dumping ground for criminals who are foreigners. Nigerians may be repatriated, but not foreigners from other countries. A brief comment on that, if you don't mind, before I talk about inflation.
Well, I think I understand completely where the concerns of many in Nigeria. The facilities here are very weak. So when we are talking of repatriation, if people have truly overstayed their visas in countries, it will not be wrong if they are asked to return to their country honorably without making them feel below human being where they are. But most importantly, I think it's important for us to build our country to be attractive enough to our own, where people will not need to overstay. Traveling out will be a choice. It will not be an escaped route from their fatherland.
Okay, very quickly, inflation. Now, the inflation figures that we got from the National Bureau of Statistics showed a 0.04% decline for consecutive, I think, 11 months now. In January, it was 15.06. It was 15.10. Now in February, we were told it's 15.06. So that's where the 0.04, reduction came from. But you see a general, difference in terms of annual reduction and monthly reduction. On an annualized basis, headline inflation has gone down, but you still have monthly pressures, particularly in the area of food inflation, particularly in terms of price pressures. And then we're told that in at least 6 states, inflation, particularly food inflation, is over 20%. And that by next month, March, or by the end of this month, when you have the March inflation rate, is going to go all the way up to, some analysts say, up to 19% by the time you factor in the effect of the global crisis in the Middle East, namely the Iran war. What do you say to this? We're facing food inflation, very serious. So your point
now, clearly speaking, people need to know the so clearly speaking, people need to know the effect of rebasing the inflation. We have gone a full cycle now year on year. So Bureau of Statistics reporting 15.06% based on the rebased inflation will be a fair report and will be relatively balanced. However, people will not expect inflation the food prices to go as low as what it was in 2022. That is not obtainable because of the decision that was taken in 2025 to rebase inflation. Now, for what people should look out for, clearly prices is increasing from rent to food prices to prices of imported commodity, things that will be transported from one point to another. We are seeing that also increasing. We have also seen that in the cost of energy. Clearly, a number of things are increasing. So do I think inflation will remain the same or reduce? Because it have reduced consistently. Because of credibility, I can tell you inflation number is expected, is almost certain that inflation will range above 15% to about 17.5%. Whether it will get to exactly 17.5%, but we know that it will be above 15%, to within that range. That is what is expected in the early numbers that is imputed for the first 20 days of March. If you compare that year on year with the first 20 days of March 2025, inflation is expected to, even if we stop it as of today, it will be above 16%. But what National Bureau of Statistics report is what will be official. But what is being checked is perhaps if today were to be the end of the month and you compare that with what happened this time last year, inflation is expected to be higher. What does that mean? We need to start thinking. MPC will meet very soon, and at the meeting of MPC, do we think that interest rates should be further dropped? If it drops, it has implication. If it increases, it has implication. But my advice, of course, would be to, for now, sit on the fence because of what is happening around the world and negative externalities that we have experienced. So inflation numbers and food inflation is also expected to increase slightly because of course, some new unrest that we have seen around the food producing zones within the country, as well as what we have seen even when it comes to the cost of moving food from farms to major urban centers where some of these food are consumed. So we'll wait for the Bureau of Statistics and see what the official number will be. So, but analysts projecting as much as 19%, where I say of today, the number is expected to be above 15%. That's above 15.1 or 15.06% that is reported, to about 17.5%. Whatever numbers it will be, whatever average Bureau of Statistics we use, but this of course is what many, the numbers, the data is saying. Whether it will be reported exactly, well, we'll wait for the official numbers to be made public, but to be presented by the Bureau of Statistics. I think in about 2 weeks from now or so, we should see the numbers for the month of March, or 3 weeks from now, we should see the number for the month of March. So, but that is what the Nigerians should prepare for in the coming period. And if the number continues to go up, we need to smell the coffee. Every 2 years, there seems to be crisis. In 2018 and 2018, it was America versus China. I spoke with your colleague on another channel, Mr. Mofae, regarding the trade war between America and China. In 2020, it was COVID. In 2022, it was Russia versus Ukraine. In 2024, it was the aftermath effect of Hamas versus Israel. This is 2026. Another thing we are seeing, Israel on one side versus Iran. What will happen in 2028 is almost certain that this trend may continue. Before it happens, will Nigeria have a reserve to protect us from this unnecessary exposure when Nigeria is not at war directly with anyone, but prices are directly being affected? Failure to plan for today, for the next 2 years, will mean that in the next 2 years, prices will go up, exchange rate will be weaker, people may lose their job, and of course, hunger may also be more sporadic that we're experiencing right now.
Okay, you use the word reserve. Let's talk about petrol shock as a result of the crisis in the Middle East, otherwise known as the Iran war. Now, fuel prices in Nigeria have gone up about 39%, one of the highest rates in the world, I think following behind Vietnam and the Philippines. Now, about 5 times in the month of March alone, prices have been adjusted upwards or downwards, particularly by Dangote refinery. Now, what do? Some countries like the US, like other countries, they have strategic petroleum reserve. The Americans have released about 152 million barrels of oil to bridge the gap. Do we even have a strategic petroleum reserve in Nigeria? And how much higher can the cost of fuel go up, with implications also for cost of diesel, which has risen by about 68, between 44% and 68%, and also, of course, transportation costs, the cost of living, the cost of everything else. Why do we have this? Despite the fact that we have the Dangote refinery, particularly, because everybody says, oh, we have Dangote refinery for local production, import licenses for domestic suppliers have been addressed, but yet petroleum marketers are protesting that we can't survive unless we keep importing what we produce, which is the paradox of Nigeria being one of the largest crude oil producers in the world.
Well, as of today, the prices the price of diesel is about 1,700. PMS has increased above 1,000 as we earlier projected a day before the war. The projection is that if Brent crude increases to about 130, Nigeria should be expected to buy PMS above 1,500, and diesel might cross the 2,000 ban. And because as of now, there is no end in view. President Trump has not agreed to speak with Iran. I said he has nobody to speak with, and Iran authority are also giving perhaps relatively tough condition for America. The two countries here, which I think are two key players, have really not agreed for the nations to have ceasefire. And we know the implication of Strait of Hormuz, which of course has posed a lot of bottlenecks to about 20% of the global oil trade as we speak. So prices are even expected to go further. What does it mean to Nigeria? Higher inflation. What does it mean again to Nigeria? It means when you go to the market as Nigeria that is not in the war, you might have to pay more. Now, Dangote in all of this has actually helped to reduce what the prices could have been. If you had imported, would have depleted our reserve. If you had imported, would have seen exchange rates gone weaker beyond about 120 naira that we have seen. About 100 naira, nearly 100 naira, I beg your pardon, that you have seen. It will not just affect inflation, it would also have affected exchange rates. And do Nigeria have functional strategic reserve as we speak? The answer is no, apart from the refinery reserve that is in the public domain. What I think is that even though our 4 refineries are not functioning, they have some reserve. We have some distribution method that have been used before now. We have Kaduna refineries. We have reserve that can be fixed. We can fix this and also maintain some reserve in those regard, in those areas. One would expect that after we had Dangote refinery, government will also try best possible to support another refinery to come to the mainstream. We understand that about 2 refineries are being worked on, and so whatever support we need to give to some of these refineries to help to reduce the impact of supply shortage is important. If you had no Dangote today, the price would have been above, and I'm talking PMS, would have been above 2,000. So it's not completely bad as it could have been if Dangote were not there. But my point here is that we need to build strategic reserve. If we cannot do that overnight or in the next 3 months, which I think we can do in less than a year, to quickly work on repairing some of the reserve. But this should not be done by government. If NNPCL will be the one to do it, I tell you, it will fail. Why? Because we saw about last year or 2 years ago when I think your colleague interviewed me that, NNPC said it has fixed 2 of the refineries and they are not functioning. I said this refinery cannot work in the hand of government. Give them to private sector to run. Today, the benefit of hindsight, one can say that those things that were mentioned are correct, because NNPC have come back to say they are not profitable to run the refinery themselves. So they are looking for who to give. But at what time of the day are we just waking up to the reality? Now, I need to add this. Government should find a way to sell more to Dangote in terms of crude at perhaps, worst come to the worst, at a discounted rate. Giving Dangote the condition for price also not to go higher beyond what Nigeria can bear. Because if this continues for the next 1 month and price go beyond 1.5, I tell you, Nigerian Labour Congress may be muting increase in pay to their staff. And you know what this means when this happens. Perhaps you might be looking at striking bill. You might also be looking at a number of things in view.
I'm going there. But let me ask you, before I ask a question about what NLC and other groups and other stakeholders want, what will be the implication for growth? I guess the projection was about 3.6%. Now, we have the World Trade Organization saying that, look, we need to revise our expectations in terms of projected economic growth. Globally, they had last year said it was 4.6. But this year, with this Iran war, WTO is saying we shouldn't expect globally anything more than between 1.4% to 1.9%. But if you bring it down to Nigeria as an economist, what do you think we should expect this year in terms of economic growth? With all these
But Nigerian growth for Yes, Nigerian growth as of first quarter that we are projecting, it should moderate from the government expectation to about 2.5 to 2.85% year on year, based on what is going on. But if this will extend to the end of the year, we might see that the growth may flat out at about 2.5 to 3% GDP growth rate, which of course will be lower than what we saw in 2025.
Okay, as we begin to wrap up, the issue about how states should respond. Now, I said the United States released gasoline from their strategic reserve, about 152 million barrels. The countries in the International Energy Agency, 32 of them, decided on 400 million barrels to be released into the market. That has not made any effect. The other countries have adopted new methods. In Sri Lanka, people are told to stay at home every Wednesday. In South Korea, there is a price cap on petrol. In Bangladesh, they now offer what they call fuel rationing. If you have a car, you can't buy more than 15 liters. If you are riding a motorcycle, you can't buy more than 5 liters. In the Philippines, people have been told also to stay at home at least once a week and to try as much as possible to avoid using public transportation. Now, I think in another country, Thailand that is, people have been told to wear short-sleeve shirts and to avoid the use of air conditioning and to stop using elevators. They should take the staircase to conserve energy. In Nigeria here, Nigerian Labour Congress that you referred to earlier is saying that government should increase the minimum wage. I have argued against that, saying wage indexation may not be the way to go. But what's your response as an economist to this idea of wage indexation? Or should we also, as one other country has done, give allowances, palliatives to people, particularly at the lower level of the economy?
Nominal palliative will not work. We have tried it over and over. It used to be 5,000 per household, increased to 10,000 per household. At best, we increase money supply. It will induce inflation. If we print money, it will become worse in a matter of 6 months to 1 year. What should Nigeria Labour Congress do? I will start with that. I've advised Labour Congress not to have settled for what they did, 70,000. It should have been 100 from the beginning. Asking for another increase within this short period of time will send negative signal to the economy. But we need to settle this issue once and for all. Anytime Labour comes out for more salary, my opinion should be what they should have asked for is quality and relatively affordable education, because when you collect money as a staff or as a worker, whether private or public, on what do you spend your money? We need to interrogate this. We spend our money mostly on transport, on education, and on feeding. Until we make the quality of what we spend our money, what we spend our money on to become quality, we should stop sending people to private school. I'm not saying private school are wrong, but there should be an option. If I want to send my child to either public or private, the public school should be of equal quality with what private school is offering. And if we need to take this off the hand of local government, especially primary school, which is the most important level of education, to this hand of state, as it then was, I think it's important for us to consider. Again, on transport, my advice to state government is that they need to have a new bride. They all need to be talking to the Nigerian Railway Corporation. Areas where the old wagon can go through and their workers are moving from one point to the other, we need to start engaging those train tracks so that we can significantly reduce what people spend on transportation. I think also that for areas where we have CNG, government, we need to activate this very strongly so that they can reduce the cost on people. People are going through quite a number right now, especially because of cost of transportation. We are almost there with the reduction, with the improvement in the value of exchange rate, and also relative stability we have seen in our reserve. Nigeria we're almost getting there, with also inflation that is stabilizing around 15%. We're almost getting there, but unfortunately, we didn't see the war coming. So the state government have a lot to do by mitigating the impact of this war on the citizens at the state level. And also the federal government, of course, being the father of the nation, we need to take quick decision as to what must be done in terms of the exposure to Nigeria. And I think that having that deal with Dangote is what federal government should do now. Make sure more crude is supplied, make sure there is relative discount by capping. Who should get the cap? Should it be people buying 15 liters? The answer is no. That country got it wrong, because that will slow down trade, that will slow down economy, that will slow down growth. What we should get cap is the pricing. Tell Dangote, if they can give to you at which rate, what will be the pump price be? What will be the gantry rate? And Dangote being in Nigeria, he had option to have left this country to invest elsewhere, but he has remained in Nigeria. That means he loves this country. What we should do is to have that conversation with him today. Make that supply to him today. Give it a relatively better rate so that he can sell to Nigeria. Economy cannot be thwarted. Economy cannot tank. If it does, of course, some of the gains that we have made in the last 3 years, we evaporate. They will disappear suddenly, and of course we might get back ourselves before we remove subsidy, before we floated the naira. So all of those gains that we have initially, we need to capitalize on them by having this discussion at the federal level, at the state level. Also labor, we need to start having new demands. Demand will not be to increase salary. Demand will be that quality of education should be better, quality of health, so that I don't have to spend more or go to the pharmacy to buy what I can be easily dispensed for me. Work more on our HMOs and make it available for people and the downtrodden. So policies need to change, not because of this war. I tell you, there could be another in 2028, and let's wait until that time, because of what have happened consistently every 2 years.
On that note, Dr. Paul Alaje, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show. Thank you very much indeed.